Welcome to Tech Challenge Makers Conquer E-Commerce. I'm Elise, your resident tech expert and author of the book Browser versus Buyer. I've worked with e-commerce shop owners for over 6 years, and I've helped hundreds of creatives overcome their technology fears. Gain clarity and direction in your business with Elise's E-Commerce Elevator 6-month group coaching program. Join now at MyScheduledBiz.com/elevator. The link is in the show notes. All right, hello, Bizzers. Today we're going to be talking with Suzy Oliver. She is the owner of Suzy Sweet Teas. Suzy Sweet Teas is a retail and wholesale graphic tee apparel brand created for the wise and witty who can find the humor in life's absurdities. So I actually get updates from Suzy's brand on my Facebook account, and I think she is hilarious and her stuff is amazing. So you should definitely go check her out. Suzy is also in the process of writing a book called Print Shirts for Profit. It is a step-by-step guide to building a profitable apparel brand. So if you're in apparel, you should check that out when it comes out. She's thinking maybe a year or so for that book. So we're not immediate, but it should be an awesome book when it's done. By the end of this episode, you're going to understand why wholesale can be a good choice for any e-commerce business, the technology that's required, and walk away with one action step. So Suzy, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here to share your expertise with us. Can you please tell us a little bit about your business and your experience with e-commerce?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I started in e-commerce kind of on accident. I had a full-time sign business. I did signs, vehicle graphics, t-shirts, promotional products, that kind of stuff. I had a walk-in business downtown on the storefront. And at the time, I was a single mother, kind of trying to make ends meet, and my health insurance kept going up, and I was trying to figure out a way that I could make a little extra money when I was already working 60 plus hours a week. And I had, just for fun, several years before that, I had come up with a few t-shirt designs that I wanted to sell on, I don't know if you remember the old Cafe Press website from like a million years ago, even before Etsy was around. I put them on there, and of course, I realized you can only make $3 or $4 a shirt, and it was ridiculous. So put all that on the back burner, put all those on a backup drive somewhere. So I dug those out, and I thought, I'm going to try this Etsy thing here. So in January 2015, I started with about 12 designs on Etsy, and it just took right off. Within 4 months, I was making more than I could have made at a part-time job anywhere else. And it was really fun. So I designed some more and kept adding more and more. And by the end of that first year, I actually made more money with my Etsy shop than I made in profits with my sign business. So it was kind of a no-brainer. I decided to kind of shift a little bit and get rid of that. I shouldn't say get rid of that business, but close the sign business. Plus the overhead on that, the building that I had purchased was just too much. So my husband and I discussed it, and we decided I would just take Suzy Sweet full time. We put the building up for sale, and by mid 2016, a cabin built and moved in on our acreage here. So I work at home, but not at home. I still have my own separate space. So that makes it a lot easier. Sold the sign business, just started doing the t-shirts. And then by the end of that year, I'd had several people reach out to me through my Etsy shop asking if I would sell my shirts wholesale. So I was selling it through Etsy there, but the one thing I realized kind of in the beginning was that the way that I had my shirts priced for retail, I wasn't making enough profit at wholesale. So I kind of took a few months to decide what I was going to do there. And I also realized I needed my own website. I couldn't do this through Etsy. These people were finding me through Etsy, and I was having to bill them through PayPal. And when somebody orders hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of shirts, it takes a long time to put together a PayPal invoice. So I did some research and decided to build my own website through WooCommerce and WordPress. I found of course, when I graduated from school in graphic design, that was way before there were web design courses. So I did have a little bit of experience with that, just doing that for other people, but not an e-commerce site. So I took a course on building a specifically WordPress and WooCommerce site. Launched that. It took me about, I'd say 2 or 3 months of part-time work to get that set up and going. And then I went to work researching options for selling wholesale. And I found a great plugin. I'm still using that one today. So I got the wholesale side of that launched, I think about April of 2017. And I just started advertising that on Google and Facebook. And by the end of that year, I blew my goal of having a 6-figure year out of the water. It was a very busy year. It was insane, but it was fun and I loved it. So
it was definitely a good decision to do wholesale for your business.
Yes, definitely.
So with that history of going through all those steps, starting on Etsy, getting your own website, setting up wholesale, you've had huge success. So why should other e-commerce shop owners consider wholesale for their e-commerce businesses?
If you have a product that you can easily make quickly and sell wholesale and make a profit, it is a no-brainer that you should sell wholesale. You can make, with each customer that you're bringing in, you can make so much more potential for profit, I guess, with one job.
So each person that you find that is interested, instead of making $10 on a shirt or whatever it is for a person that buys one shirt, you can make hundreds of dollars from one customer. That's pretty much what you're saying.
Yes.
So you can
exactly
exponentially multiply your ability to get profit.
Yes.
Okay.
So all those advertising dollars I was spending bringing people in, instead of, like you said, selling a $10 t-shirt, I was, I'd get 100 to sometimes $700,000 orders. So just from bringing in that one client.
It also meant that for your advertising budget, you could afford to spend more because you were going to make more on the other end, which would mean that for competition wise, you're not having to worry as much about competing with smaller shops. You're competing for a larger ad spend.
Yep, exactly.
So guys, if that isn't an answer, why should e-commerce shop owners consider wholesale and potentially do wholesale for the business? I think that's it. You can exponentially increase your profits, and that's why you should consider it. And you don't have to wait until you've been in business for 10 years. Suzy did it in your second year of business, right? Or at the end of your second year of business.
Yep.
And you've been doing it since then. So you've been selling wholesale. You have your website. It's been 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
And you're still finding success with that. When you were getting ready to start wholesale, was there any part of the technology that you found was overwhelming, or did you struggle at first to get set up for wholesale aside from doing your retail business on your website?
Yeah, before I started with the WordPress and WooCommerce combination, I had tried Shopify, and I just couldn't find enough tutorials on how to get that set up correctly, and it was taking me way too long to get that set up. So did a little more research and decided that the WordPress WooCommerce combination, I found a great tutorial on how to do that, and I thought that might be more my cup of tea and something I could understand. It was a little more like the websites that I had done for other people in the past. So I hadn't actually used WordPress, so even that part of the tech was kind of a learning curve, but since I did have a little bit of experience in something similar, I picked that up pretty quickly. So, and I was actually able to get that site launched within about 3 months. I'm just working on it part-time.
So that's awesome. So I think that's really the key with tech in general, is that everybody sort of has their own kind of wiring in their mind. And so what's going to work best for them? So like you were using WordPress WooCommerce, and you found a plugin that works great for that. Shopify has plugins for wholesale as well. Then there's things like Fair, which I know you have some experience with as well. All of these are options. These are different ways that you can set up your wholesale. You can also do it the old-fashioned way, like you said in the beginning, where you're having to just set up each line on PayPal. All of those can work, but it's figuring out what system works best for you so that you're not spending a lot of time, right?
Yep.
And
exactly.
It sounds like the plugin that you're using, which we will reference, there'll be a link in the description of this video. It has been the thing that has really made it easier for you to do that wholesale and make those profits, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Before I started using that plugin, I was having to just keep a spreadsheet with everybody's information, the account information, and they were just having to reach out to me via email or Etsy. So that was probably the one thing that I like most about this plugin that I ended up using. With their features, they have basically kind of an onboarding feature right there that you just plug right into your website. They can apply for an account right there, and then it keeps track of all their account information.
Yeah, that is a really nice feature. I know with my clients that I've helped with their websites, that onboarding process, I think sometimes is the worst part of it. So having something that lets it be automated for you, and then you can easily say, yes, you're approved, no, you're not approved, is a huge hurdle to get past for sure.
Yeah. And that got us through a lot of the, before I let them register on my site, they had to go through and read my terms and conditions, because that was definitely something that took up a lot of my time before I had that set up, was all of the constant questions and having to kind of basically train my retailers. So that was a big help there.
Okay, awesome. And so one other thing I want to talk about here, where we're talking about the thing that can be overwhelming or that maybe people don't understand, is I want to talk about exactly what wholesale is. So this seems very basic to you and I know, but I do help people that are tech challenged, that don't really understand business. They're building new businesses. So I want to make sure this is clear. So for those of you who are unclear about what wholesale is, wholesale just means instead of you making the product and selling it to an individual who then uses the product or gives it as a gift, you are making the product and selling it to another business who is then selling it to the final end user. And so that's what wholesale is. Instead of direct customer, you are selling direct to another business. So you might hear B2C or B2B for business to customer, business to business. And so wholesale just means she's selling it a lot of something to a business instead of a little of something to an individual person. So just to make sure we cover that, what exactly that is. All right, so let's move on to our next question, Suzy. So what is one piece of advice that you would offer to anyone that is considering wholesale for their business?
If you are even thinking about maybe doing wholesale sometime in the future, or if you're just getting started building a brand, even if you're not considering it at this time, haven't thought of it, this is the first time that this is an idea for you. Take the time before you really launch your products and price your products out as if you're going to be selling wholesale someday. That was my biggest mistake in the beginning. Selling retail, I was still making a great profit on my products, that it wasn't any big deal. But when you start selling wholesale, you have other expenses that you need to work into that. You really need to take the time and go through your pricing.
So let's talk a little bit about the difference between pricing for wholesale and retail. I think that is an excellent tip, very good tip. And even if you're not considering wholesale, you really need to think about this pricing as well, because you want to make sure you have enough buffer there to still make a profit as you do things like sales and everything else. So what is the difference between pricing as retail and pricing as wholesale? For those of you who don't understand, wholesale is typically, well, pretty much always going to be cheaper to buy per item than retail. So how do you see the different pricing there? How do you set your wholesale prices, I guess is what I'm asking.
Most retailers expect to be able to mark up your products at least 50%. In the apparel industry, it's typically 50 to 60%. So I had to figure out exactly my bottom line profit that I wanted to make on each item that I sold. And I sell different items, not just t-shirts, but tank tops and ladies options and everything. So I had to go through and price out every single one, figure out my minimum profit that I wanted to make. And then I also had to take into account some of the extra expenses I had for wholesale, like my the plugin that I use. I have to pay for that every year. If you're selling on Fair, a site like that, there's commissions you have to take into consideration.
And how does the wholesale price, once you come to the wholesale price, impact your retail price?
So then my retail price becomes double my wholesale price.
That's, I think, where it's hard for people to kind of grasp. The reason Suzy is saying you have to take into account how you would sell for wholesale when you're marking your retail prices is because you're going to have to cut that in half when it goes to how you're selling to your wholesalers or to your stores, right?
Yeah.
So you can think about it either way. Figure out your wholesale price, double it for retail, or you can think about it the other way around. If your retail is $30 for an item, you're going to sell that as wholesale probably at $15, right? Or possibly less, depending upon your industry. So you have to make sure that your retail price is priced in a way that you can take that 50% off to be able to sell it wholesale.
And still make a profit.
And so there are a lot of makers in particular who already their retail, they're making like $1 for something like that. $1 an hour at their retail price. So if you then had to cut that in half, you're now paying someone to buy your product.
Yep, exactly.
So that I think is absolutely the best piece of advice that I would say that you could possibly give. So good call on that one. Make sure that you're considering your pricing from the get-go so that you leave wiggle room for your wholesale pricing when and if you're ready to do wholesale. On top of that, the nice side effect of that is while you're selling just retail direct to customer, you're going to make more profit on each item.
Yep.
So it helps you whether you start wholesale or not.
Yep. And that actually helped me weather the storm through the COVID, the pandemic shutdown. By May of that year, my retailers were all closed down, and I went from 20 to 30 wholesalers a week to, I think I had 3 wholesale orders in 6 months. So, but since I had my retail prices set just fine, all these people were sitting at home. They were bored, shopping online, buying t-shirts for their work at home jobs all of a sudden. And I actually did very well that year. So
it's all about, you always hear the saying, never put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yep.
So yes, wholesale can be a great way to multiply your profits, like we talked about at the beginning of this. But by keeping that retail in line with what wholesale needs to be, you're also making it so you can make significantly more profits on the retail side of your business. And so when the wholesale was great, you were rolling in it from the wholesale. When the wholesale had a slump, your retail picked up, right? And so that's one of the great things about having both sides of that business. Have you ever considered shutting down your retail side?
I did for a while when I was really slammed with wholesale. There was a couple of years that were just insane. I had Facebook and Google ads going like crazy, and I should have just probably paused those for a while, but I was kind of heading towards burnout. And for a while there, I actually considered shutting one or the other down and just doing one or the other. So,
but when COVID hit, I bet you were glad you didn't.
Yes, very much. And that was always kind of in the back of my mind. I thought, that's kind of limiting myself. So I've always been a fan of having multiple avenues to pivot to. So
yeah, I think that's just smart business ownership. That I think is excellent. I'm so glad that you were able to join me, Suzy. This has been great. So we didn't really talk about this before, but I actually know Suzy from years ago. And when I was thinking about wholesale, I went and checked out her business to see where she was after like 5 years to see if you were still doing wholesale. And she was, and I was pretty impressed with it. So you've been doing this for a while. You really do know what you're talking about. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk to the bizzers so that they could learn a little bit more about wholesale. I don't do wholesale with my business. So it's nice to have someone else come on and be the expert where I can't necessarily fill that hole. If our listeners want to know more about you, how can they find you? How would you like them to connect with you? I mean, aside from going and buying an awesome t-shirt.
Yep. Well, they can go to my website, www.susyswede.com. On my website there, I will have a link at the bottom of the main page. We'll get you to a page I have set up with some of my tips for how to grow your own business. So.
And the link will be in the show notes. It's susyswede.com/backyard-CEO. And so you can get to that way as well. So, Suzy, I know you're on Facebook. You're like updates on Facebook. You're on Instagram.
Yep,
where else are you?
On Instagram also. Twitter. I'm not on Twitter too much, but
okay, so
probably
Instagram
Facebook and Instagram are the best way. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And Bizzers, I will see you next week. If you have any questions about wholesale, definitely contact us. Let us know. We'll be happy to answer those questions for you. If you like what we're doing here at Tech Challenge Makers Conquer E-commerce, and it's helping you gain clarity and direction in your business, you should check out Elise's e-commerce elevator. In this 6-month group coaching program, I'll guide you through the ins and outs of building a business for purchase conversion. You'll also get to join up with a small group of other e-commerce shop owners who are focused on building exponential growth and reaching the right audience. Head over to myscheduledbiz.com/elevator and join us. We welcome a limited number of new members every 6 months, and by signing up today, you'll reserve your spot. Thanks for listening. See you next week right here on Tech Challenge Makers Conquer E-commerce.